Merry meet, and welcome to the Occultorium Historian channel. I'm your host, Sapphire, and I have a new microphone, if you notice, so I can move around a little bit more, hang out a little bit more. But we come back to the archives. I know last week's topic was pretty dark, World War II history, but if you are interested in reading more about it, I invite you. Purchase a copy of the book in the description below. It is pretty interesting. I spent an entire summer researching that information on the human experimentations that took place in Japan during World War II. Anyways, back to our normal educational content here on this channel. That of historical cases of witchcraft within America and the occult. Let's get into it. While the Salem witch trials really dominate American popular memory, the phenomenon of witchcraft accusations extend far beyond Massachusetts. In the southern colonies, particularly the Carolinas, witchcraft prosecutions occurred within a different legal, societal, and even religious environment. These cases, although fewer and less sensational than their New England counterparts, illuminate how fear and gender within colonial law intertwined to shape nearly every early North Carolinian society. The witch trials that took place in the early 18th century, such as the 1703 case against Susannah Evans, reveal a society negotiating English legal heritage, frontier insecurity, and even the complex power dynamics of small communities. Later echoes of witchcraft belief, from 19th century folklore all the way to 20th century accusations, really demonstrate that these anxieties never fully vanished, but instead transformed alongside shifting ideas of gender and morality. The first legislative framework for witchcraft within the colony derived directly from English law. As early as December 3, 1679, the Assembly of Albemarle instructed juries to investigate felonies, witchcrafts, enchantments, sorceries, and the magical arts. This statute mirrored England's Witchcraft Act of 1604 and reflected the transference of metropolitan fears to the American colonies. Unlike Puritan New England, however, North Carolina lacked a strong ecclesiastical infrastructure. Its dispersed settlements and absence of established clergy limited formal religious investigations and interventions within legal matters. The province's courts, operating under the general court system, handled witchcraft as a criminal offense rather than a theological crime. And despite the legal precedent, only a handful of witchcraft cases appear in North Carolina's colonial court records between 1665 and 1720. The rarity of prosecutions really suggests that local authorities approach these accusations with great caution. Superstitions and rumors circulated widely within rural communities, but legal conviction required testimony and procedural formality that most communities hesitated to pursue. Nevertheless, in one case in particular, that of the trial of Susannah Evans in 1703, it really exemplifies how the legal and social realities of the colony shaped the handling of witchcraft allegations. The earliest and best documented North Carolina witch trial unfolded in the precinct of Currituck, then the part of Albemarle County, during the summer and autumn of 1703. Court records preserved in the Colonial Court Records and transcribed by the NC Gen Web project detail this accusation through legal procedure and its outcome. The events began in July of 1703, when a Thomas Boucher, sometimes recorded as Bourchier, submitted a deposition claiming that his household had been afflicted by a mysterious illness. His wife, Deborah Boucher, reported severe pain in her feet and legs, as if 1,000 nails pierced her flesh, followed by stomach torment so intense that she feared death. Visitors to the Boucher home reportedly fell ill after entering, reinforcing superstitions and suspicions that the cause was supernatural. Deborah identified a local woman as her attacker, Susannah Evans, as the source of her suffering, asserting that Evans had bewitched her. Fast forward to October 27, 1703, a grand jury of Currituck Precinct presented a formal bill of indictment against Evans. The charge read as follows: Susannah Evans of the Precinct of Currituck, not having the fear of God before her eyes, but being led by the instigation of the devil, did, devilishly and maliciously, bewitch and by her witchcraft cause the death of Deborah Boucher. The indictment's language closely echoed English legal phrasing, suggesting that colonial justices modeled their documents on familiar metropolitan forms. However, when the jury returned its decision, it endorsed the term ignoramus, meaning there was insufficient evidence to proceed to trial. Evans was thus acquitted and discharged, though she was required to pay the court costs. The Evans case demonstrates three critical understandings. There was limited escalation. Unlike Salem's mass hysteria, only one person was accused. There was procedural restraint. The court relied on evidence rather than spectral testimony. And lastly, female vulnerability and resistance. Evans was a marginalized woman, defended herself through the legal process, and later even petitioned for attachment against her accuser's estate to recover the damages of the accusations. Although Evans was acquitted, the accusations most likely would have branded her permanently within her local gossip networks. Now, I know what you're thinking, but no. The Evans case was not an isolated event, but instead part of a broader, though subdued, pattern across the American South. In Virginia, several witchcraft trials occurred within the 17th century, such as that of Grace Sherwood, who was convicted in Princess Anne County in 1706, after the infamous ducking test. North Carolina shared much of Virginia's population and legal culture, but its courts displayed even greater reluctance to pursue executions. No verified record exists of a witchcraft execution in North Carolina boundaries. The legal system's restraint reflected both pragmatic and ideological changes. By the early 18th century, Enlightenment skepticism had influenced that of Sir John Holt, who repeatedly acquitted alleged witches. Holt insisted on empirical proof filtered through legal instruction manuals used in the colonies. As a result, North Carolina's courts tended to dismiss witchcraft indictments unless tangible harm could be proven, thereby curbing potential outbreaks of mass hysteria and mass prosecution. Nonetheless, belief in witchcraft remained pervasive in the cultural imagination. Folk healers, midwives, and solitary women did continue to attract suspicion well into the 19th century. Oral traditions in the Appalachian and Piedmont regions kept alive the tales of witch riding, charms, and conjure, blending European superstition with African and indigenous spiritual practices. So, what does this all mean? Gender played a decisive role in witchcraft accusations across colonial and post colonial America. In North Carolina, as in New England, most accused witches were often women. The colonial household economy tied female identities to fertility, obedience, and moral virtue, and women who deviated risked being labeled as dangerous or deviant or even colluding with the devil. The Evans case really fits this pattern. Although surviving records really reveal little about her background, her position as a woman without a male protector likely made her a convenient scapegoat. The language of the indictment, led by the instigation of the devil, gendered sin as female weakness. By placing her outside divine order, the community reaffirmed patriarchal authority. Historians of gender in the South really note that witchcraft accusations functioned more of a form of social discipline. According to Carol Carlson, female accusations reflected men's anxieties about property, inheritance, and even sexuality. In frontier North Carolina, where widows could inherit land and exercise economic independence, witchcraft allegations served to police those boundaries. By the mid 18th century, however, the image of the witch really began to shift from the literal danger to the cultural metaphor, appearing in sermons, songs, and folklore more as a symbol of moral disorder than a real threat. She kind of became the boogeyman. Although legal procedures faded, witchcraft beliefs persisted in North Carolina's cultural landscape. Folklore collections from that of the Works Progress Administration, or WPA, in the 1930s recorded numerous tales of witches within the mountains, stories of hag-ridden sleepers, bewitched livestock, and conjure healers who took off spells. This continuation culminated in modern incidences that mirror colonial fears and new social forms. Now, one striking 20th century case that occurred was in Morganton, Burke County in 1976, involving that of a Joanne Denton. She was a self proclaimed witch, accused of fortune telling a woman's death during a seance. According to the State Magazine and the Appalachian student newspaper, Denton was charged under a local ordinance after the alleged prophecy alarmed townspeople. She appeared in court in April 27th, 1976, where the charges were dismissed. Later, the Albuquerque Journal recounted the story as emblematic of North Carolina's lingering suspicion toward occultism, describing how residents of Morganton still whispered of curses and spells, generations after the last colonial indictment. Even the Esquire article, The Wicked Witch of North Carolina, written in 1976, further dramatized Denton's experience, casting her as a cultural descendant of colonial witches and a woman punished not for a crime, but simply for nonconformity. This modern echo underscores a continuation of gendered fear and fascination. The witch as a figure of both anxiety and autonomy. In colonial times, witchcraft accusations expressed fear of disorder within godly communities. In the 20th century, they reflected apprehension about feminism, New Age spirituality, and even social change. Public history within North Carolina has only really recently begun to engage with its witchcraft past, whereas within Massachusetts, they have memorialized Salem through museums and tourism. North Carolina's witch trials have remained largely forgotten. Yet, the Evans case and later folklore invite critical reflection on how communities construct moral boundaries. Archives, such as the State Archives of North Carolina's Colonial Court Records collection, now make these documents accessible for people like you and me, allowing us to re examine early modern belief systems through the Southern lens. Now, historians argue that the region's restraint toward witch trials reveals more of a pragmatic pluralism absent within the northern Puritan New England, a tolerance born of necessity and a sparsely governed colony. The 1703 prosecution of Susannah Evans really stands out from the early South struggles between superstition and reason. Its careful acquittal demonstrates how colonial courts tried to balance their inherited English statutes within the emerging skepticism of the Enlightenment. From Currituck Precinct to modern Morganton, accusations of witchcraft really reveal enduring tensions surrounding gender, morality, otherness, and spirituality. They illuminate how fear can migrate through centuries, changing form but not essence. Where once a woman faced indictment under divine law, a modern counterpart might face ridicule or legal scrutiny for claiming spiritual powers. Through reclaiming these stories, we can help bridge the gap between legal record and collective memory, reminding us that even in the absence of gallows or pyres, societies continue to define themselves through the boundaries they draw around the term witch. Again, I am your Cultorium historian host, Sapphire. And thank you so much this week for tuning in yet again for another educational episode on witchcraft and the occult within the Carolinas. I hope in the future I can delve more into other topics. And yes, be sure to check out the Patreon where I post all sorts of goodies for everyone. You don't have to pay to be a patron. The support means the world to us over here on this channel, as it is just me right now. Again, thank you so much, and until next time, stay curious.